When I decorated our home, my husband's family showed up and replaced everything, smiling. A wife follows the husband's family style. My husband shrugged. It's just how it is. Smiling, I let them finish, then the next morning, they returned to a house that left them in absolute shock. I'm in my late 30s, live in a suburb just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. I work full-time as a remote interior decorator. I've been married to Roy, not his real name, for 5 years. Roy's family is the kind of family that believes tradition matters more than common sense. They do things one way, their way, and they expect everyone to fall in line. I didn't grow up like that, so from the start, I knew we'd clash. I just didn't expect it to happen like this. About 2 years ago, Roy and I bought a house together. Or that's what he likes to say. In reality, I paid the down payment. My name is the only name on the deed. That's important, and we'll come back to that later. We moved into a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom house. Real hardwood floors, big backyard, clean lines. I saw potential. I knew I could turn it into something beautiful. Roy didn't care much about the look of the house. He always said, "You're the design expert. Do what you want." And that's exactly what I did. For the next several months, I poured every bit of my time and energy into making that house feel like home. I didn't throw money around recklessly. I made mood boards, sketched out layouts, did some DIY projects, and sourced a lot of things secondhand and vintage. It was warm, clean, modern, cozy. It finally felt like ours, or at least mine, in the sense that I had finally built the environment I wanted to live in. And then his family came over. It was a Sunday afternoon in September. Roy told me his family wanted to come by and see the house. He said they'd only be there for a couple of hours. Cool. I baked some muffins, brewed coffee, set out some cheese and crackers. I even lit a candle. At 1 p.m., the whole family pulled up, his parents, his 2 sisters, and a cousin. I opened the door, expecting smiles and compliments. Instead, I got Delia, his mother. Oh, this is very modern. Tess, his sister. It doesn't feel like a family home. Ed, his father, grunts and looks at the wall. I thought it was just the usual passive-aggressive stuff they always did. I was wrong. They stayed longer than planned. A lot longer. Around 3:30 p.m., I was cleaning up in the kitchen when I noticed Tess and Delia whispering in the living room. 10 minutes later, Roy and his dad went out to help bring something in from the car. That something turned out to be 3 giant boxes. Then a rolled-up rug. Then another painting. Then a new curtain rod. I was standing there watching them bring in box after box of furniture, decorations, kitchenware, even lamps, like they were moving into our house. I asked Roy, "What the hell is going on?" He avoided eye contact and said, "They just brought some things they thought we'd like. It's not a big deal." Then Delia turned to me with this smug little smile and said, "A wife follows the husband's family style. That's tradition." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I looked around and saw that Roy wasn't stopping them. They were already taking things off the walls. They moved my handcrafted coffee table into the garage without asking. Replaced my soft white curtains with heavy burgundy ones. They literally unscrewed my light fixture and replaced it with a brass one Delia had in storage. They shoved all my handmade vases, bowls, and ceramic decor into boxes and put up framed Bible quotes, fake flowers, and oil paintings that looked like they were stolen from a church basement. I kept looking at Roy, thinking he'd say something. He didn't. When I finally confronted him, he just said, "It's just how it is. They're trying to help." No, they weren't helping. They were taking over. But I said nothing. Not yet. I sat quietly on the couch for the next 2 hours, watching them redecorate my house like I didn't even live there. They acted like I was invisible. Delia kept giving directions like she was the general of a design army. Molly was hanging religious wall art while talking about energy flow. Tess took down my handmade curtains and folded them like they were trash. No one asked permission. No one cared what I thought. Roy just stood there, watching sports on his phone, occasionally helping them lift things. By 7 p.m., the house looked like a retirement home. Heavy colors, mismatched furniture, fake ivy vines draped over the door frames, and 3 massive paintings of Jesus on the walls. My house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like someone else's storage unit. After they left, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked into our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall. Roy walked in and said, "Don't be mad. You know how my family is." That sentence broke something in me. I asked him, "Do you like what they did?" He shrugged. "I mean, I don't really care. It's just stuff." I said nothing. I turned off the lamp and went to sleep. But I didn't sleep. I stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, planning. I knew one thing for sure, they were going to keep coming. They would keep bringing more of their style, and Roy wouldn't stop them. I had 2 options: Fight them now and look crazy and emotional, or let them finish and end it all in one clean sweep. I picked the second one. First, I went online and rented a large storage unit a few towns over. Then, I texted my friend Theo, who owns a moving and junk haul service. Years ago, I helped him design his office for free. He still owed me. I told him I needed everything in the house removed quickly and quietly, and not just taken away. I wanted my things returned and their things gone. Donated. Discarded. Destroyed. Didn't care. We set a time for late Friday night. Meanwhile, I smiled and nodded at every new gift they brought during the week. I acted grateful. I even made cookies. Tess brought over a grandfather clock. I said, wow, that's lovely. Delia suggested redoing the kitchen cabinets in oak. I said, maybe next month. They had no idea. Not one clue. Friday came faster than I expected. By then, the house looked even worse. Delia had replaced our modern kitchen stools with these massive carved wooden chairs that didn't fit under the counter. Molly brought in this huge floral love seat that reeked of lavender-scented old lady perfume. Tess added a giant cross above the TV. Even the doormat got swapped out with one that read, "Bless this mess." They weren't joking. And Roy? Still silent. Still useless. Every time I brought it up, he'd say, "Don't overreact. It's not worth a fight." It was worth a fight. But not the kind he was expecting. At 11:30 p.m., Theo showed up with 3 guys and 2 trucks. They worked fast, quiet, professional. By 1:45 a.m., everything his family had brought in was gone. I didn't even want to see it anymore. Some of it went straight into Theo's donation pile. Some to trash. I didn't ask. I didn't care. By 2:30 a.m., my home was back. My couch, my shelves, my lighting, my handmade ceramic bowls. The bamboo light fixture I installed with my own hands. I stood in the middle of the living room, barefoot, staring at it all. It felt like I could breathe again. But the next part? That's when things started to unravel. They showed up around 10 a.m. Roy had told them to come by and help finish the rest of the house. I was sitting on the couch, sipping coffee, dressed in black, watching the clock. I heard them pull up. Heard their footsteps on the porch. Doorbell rang. I didn't move. I just waited for Roy to open the door and let them in, like always. The moment they walked in, I saw Delia freeze. Her eyes swept the room, back and forth, faster and faster. Tess's mouth dropped open. Molly whispered, "What the hell?" Ed actually spoke for once. "Where's the stuff?" I didn't say anything. Delia looked around, wide-eyed. "What? Where's everything we brought?" I took a slow sip of coffee and said, "Gone. All of it." Roy looked around like he was seeing the room for the first time. Then looked at me. You took it all out?" I stared at him and said nothing. Delia walked right up to me, hands shaking. "You can't just throw out our things." "Sure I can," I said, calmly. "None of it belonged here. They were gifts. I didn't ask for them. They were part of the family. This isn't the family's house." Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and held up a folder. "This is the deed. This house is in my name. Not yours. Not Roy's. Not the family's. You all walked in and acted like you owned it. You don't." Delia turned red. Not just embarrassed, furious. "You ungrateful little..." Roy cut her off. "Mom, calm down." That surprised me. First time he spoke against them. But then he turned to me and said, "You should have told me you were planning this." I stared at him. "Why would I? You didn't listen the first 10 times." After that, the room turned to ice. Delia looked me up and down like I was a stranger. Tess was whispering to Molly like I couldn't hear her. "You knew she was always going to do this. She's not family." Then Delia dropped the real bomb. "You want a husband, you follow his family. That's how marriage works. You've been disrespectful since day one. You think you can play decorator, but you're just temporary. This house is temporary. You're temporary." I looked at Roy. He didn't even blink. Just rubbed his temple and said, "Can everyone just chill?" That's when I snapped. I turned to him and said, "Tell them the truth. Tell them how much you paid toward this house. Go ahead." Silence. Delia narrowed her eyes. What's she talking about? I didn't wait for him to answer. I pulled out the bank documents, laid them on the table. This house was bought with my money. My inheritance. Roy's name is nowhere on the title, the mortgage, the insurance, nothing. He was unemployed when we bought it. He didn't put in a dime. I turned to Roy again. "You gonna correct me?" He didn't. He couldn't. Delia looked like she swallowed a lemon. You let her buy the house alone?" Roy looked down. "She had the money. It made sense." Delia shook her head. "You've embarrassed our whole family." She grabbed her purse and walked out. Tess and Molly followed, whispering the whole way. Ed just nodded at me like he finally respected me or feared me. Not sure which. Roy stood by the door, watching them leave. He didn't say a word. That night, Roy slept on the couch. He said he needed space. Fine by me. Next morning, I woke up early and went to the garage. Something felt off. I opened the door and saw one of the boxes. I packed my box, clearly labeled with my handwriting, open. Inside, things were missing. A few of my ceramics. A framed print. A lamp. The brass watering can I loved. I checked the storage room. 2 more boxes had been opened. One was completely gone. I ran back inside and asked Roy if he moved anything. He looked at me with wide eyes. No. What are you talking about? I said, don't lie. Someone took stuff from the garage. His jaw clenched. I didn't do it. I said, then who did? He looked down. And that's when I knew. After I realized some of my things were missing, I started checking every inch of the garage and basement. Not just for missing stuff, but for signs someone had been sneaking around. Sure enough, behind the water heater, tucked under an old drop cloth, I found the empty box. The tape was sliced clean across. The label I'd written, living room, fragile, was torn halfway off like someone tried to remove it in a hurry. Inside? Nothing. Gone. My handmade ceramic lamp, a framed print from my college mentor, 2 brass candlesticks from my late aunt, and a small stack of my original sketches. I stood there, heart racing. These weren't just things. These were mine. That's when the thought hit me. How did they even get into the garage? Roy and I were the only ones with keys. And I always kept the garage locked at night. Unless. That evening, I asked Roy directly, did your mom or sisters come back into the house this week when I wasn't home? He hesitated. That was all I needed to see. I asked again, this time slower. Did they come inside while I was out running errands? Roy finally admitted it. Okay, yeah. I gave Tess the spare key. But it was just to grab the pie dish she brought over. That's all. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He gave his sister the key to my house without asking me. I walked away. Didn't yell. Didn't scream. I just walked straight to the lockbox in the laundry room, took out the backup key set, and started changing every single lock. Front door. Back door. Garage. Even the storage room. Roy came out and watched me do it. You're seriously changing the locks? Yes. You're overreacting. No. I'm reacting. For the first time. The next day, while Roy was out at lunch with his cousin, I got a knock on the door. It was Tess. She didn't even say hi. Just stood there holding a large plastic storage bin. I came to return a few things that got mixed up, she said, too fast. I opened the door and took the bin. I didn't invite her in. She stood there, annoyed. Aren't you going to check it? I will. Later. You're not even going to say thank you? I said nothing. She scoffed, spun around, and left. I carried the bin inside and opened it on the kitchen table. Right on top, the missing candlesticks and my ceramic lamp. But something was off. The lamp had a chip on the base. The candlesticks had faint wax residue. They'd been used. She didn't return them. She borrowed them without asking. Probably thought I wouldn't notice. Or wouldn't care. I pulled out the framed print, and that's when I saw it. The glass had been replaced. Why? I flipped it over and found the corner of the print bent. Torn. Like someone had tried to pull it out and damaged it in the process. They didn't just borrow my things. They messed with them. I sat down at the table, stared at that cracked lamp base, and started shaking. This wasn't about decor anymore. This was personal. That night, I started doing what I should have done earlier. Going through our shared home computer. Roy's email was still logged in. I wasn't looking for trouble, but something felt off. In his drafts folder, I found something that made my stomach drop. It was a partially written email to Tess. Mom says she still has that cabinet from Grandma's place. If you guys want to swap it in next week, just do it before she gets back from yoga. She won't notice if it's done fast. She won't notice. She. Me. They were making plans. To keep redecorating. Behind my back. Even after the blow-up. Even after I put everything back. Even after I warned them. And Roy knew. He was in on it. That's when everything snapped into focus. This wasn't just about mismatched furniture or bad curtains. This was about control. About power. About me being erased in my own home. I emailed my attorney and asked for a copy of the trust documentation tied to my inheritance. The money I used to buy this house came from that trust. I wanted to be sure. Within a day, she sent over the files. Crystal clear. The house was bought entirely with funds from the trust. I was the sole grantee. Any future spouse had no claim unless explicitly added to the deed. I had all the proof I needed. But I wasn't done. 2 days later, Roy didn't come home. He didn't answer texts. Didn't reply to calls. At 10:47 p.m., I got a voicemail. It was Tess. Hey, Roy's staying here for a while. He needs space from all this toxic energy you're bringing. When you're ready to talk like an adult, we'll consider setting boundaries that make sense for everyone. She ended it with a tone that made my skin crawl. They really thought they won. They thought they'd chase me out of my own home. They thought he could just move back in later, once I cooled down. That's not how this was going to go. But not for me. I started boxing up his things. Clothes, shoes, watches, chargers, books, socks. I labeled each box clearly. I stacked them by the door. And then? I found something else. Buried in his side of the closet was an envelope. Inside were 2 receipts, both from a local storage rental facility. Dates matched the week before Delia and her daughters first visited. They'd been planning this for weeks. They were storing furniture ahead of time, coordinating behind my back. They never came to visit. They came to replace. And Roy helped. He signed for the unit. Paid for it. Rented a truck. This was never just his family being pushy. This was betrayal. From inside my own home, I took those storage receipts and drove straight to the address listed. It was about 30 minutes outside the city, tucked behind a gas station and a firewood yard. Your typical small-town rental facility. I walked into the office, showed the receipts, and asked the clerk, "Is Unit 117 still rented?" He nodded. "Yeah, but it's set to expire in a few days. Do you need access?" I showed him the authorization slip Roy had signed and said he asked me to grab a few boxes. He didn't question it. Buzzed me through. When I opened the door to Unit 117, I nearly dropped my keys. Inside wasn't just furniture. It was a copy of my house. Same layout. Same style. Same couch as mine, but in green floral. Same type of light fixture, but brass instead of bamboo. The same type of armchair, but upholstered in thick red velvet. They had built a replica of my home, down to the rug placement, but all in their style. There were even photo frames empty. They were going to replace me entirely. Not just the house. Everything. My hands shook while unlocking the front door. Roy's boxes were still there, untouched, by the hallway. I didn't move them. Instead, I printed the photos. All of them. The replica setup. The empty picture frames. The delivery tags. And I planned one last move. Sunday afternoon, Roy texted me, "We're having dinner at Mom's. It's been tense. Come clear the air." I said yes. I wanted to look them in the eye. I drove there with a small manila folder tucked under my arm. They were already seated when I arrived. Roy, his mom Delia, Tess, Molly, Ed, and even the cousin Jason, who mostly stayed quiet during the last visit. I sat down, calm, straight-backed. Delia didn't wait. "You're finally ready to be reasonable?" Tess smirked. "Took you long enough." I set the folder on the table. I went to Unit 117. The room froze. Delia blinked. "Excuse me?" "I know about the storage unit. The pre-furnished copy of my house. The empty photo frames. The furniture you were planning to bring next." Tess tried to cover. "We were just saving some old pieces." I slid a photo across the table. "Sure, that's why the couch is in the same spot. Same number of chairs. Same side tables. You built a redecorated version of my house." Roy looked at it and finally cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." Delia hissed, "Be quiet." But Roy stood up. "No. I'm done pretending." She was right. From the beginning. Everyone stared. "She's right," he repeated. "We crossed the line. You crossed it." I should have said something months ago. But I was scared. Of you. Of disappointing the family. So I stayed quiet and let you all bulldoze her. He looked down at me. "And I let you down. Badly." Tess stood up, voice raised. "Oh, now you defend her? After everything? You're supposed to be one of us." Molly joined in. "She's making a scene." But I didn't raise my voice. "I'm not making a scene. I'm defending my home. I've been quiet, patient, polite while you walked all over me. I let you finish your little performance, and now I'm saying, it's over." Delia's face twisted. "This is what happens when you marry out of tradition. You think you're better than us." I looked at her and said clearly, "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm sane." And with that, I dropped the second folder. Inside? A printed notice. Roy's name officially removed from every joint account. The house recertified under the trust protections. Locks changed. Key access logged. And a formal notice from my lawyer. Roy had 48 hours to collect his belongings, or everything left would be considered abandoned. I stood up, quiet, firm. "Your family tried to erase me. You failed." I left the dinner table. I didn't say goodbye. I drove home in silence. 2 hours later, Roy texted, "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I just wanted peace." I replied, "You don't get peace without protecting it." He showed up that night. Not to argue. Just to pack. He cried while folding shirts into a duffel. I didn't stop him. I didn't hug him. He tried to say sorry. I nodded. Okay. Delia never reached out again. Tested once to accuse me of poisoning Roy. I didn't respond. But guess who did? Jason, the cousin. He messaged me days later. You handled that with more grace than I've ever seen. If you ever need backup, I'm around. It's been 6 months. The house is quiet now. Peaceful. The kind of peace that hums in your bones. There's a new plant in the entryway. My ceramic lamp, now repaired, glows softly beside it. People say revenge is loud. But mine was silent. Clean. Sharp. They tried to decorate over me. Instead, I removed them. I lost a marriage, but found something bigger, a home that no one gets to steal from me again.
Asterisk after listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Asterisk.